Hello everybody, welcome to It Was Tuesday with your host James Chen, aka Jay Chenzor. Gonna have a light day. We haven't done a viewer Q&A session in quite some time, so that is what we're gonna be doing today. I'm just gonna be answering questions in the chat, and so we can just get started right away. Alright, so the first question we have right here is from Ho Muffin, who asks, you think we get a balance patch with Terry? I don't know. I hope so. They said that they are doing balances more often, and the Bison patch came with a few balance adjustments, small balance adjustments here and there, nothing too extensive, like reverting Zangief's standing medium kick back to its pre-buffed form, for example. So there is a good chance that the Terry patch does come with some buffs. It would be really nice if they could, buff Kimberly, but I'll also put in a little bit for Manon as well, buff Manon as well. Although that's terrible for Kimberly, because as bad as Manon is, like, one of the only matches that Manon wins pretty handily is against Kim. I know a lot of Manon players are like, what are you talking about? I can't do anything to Kim. Dude, that fight sucks as a Kim player, dude. Even in season 1, I think one of the stronger Kimberly players out there said Manon was Kimberly's actual worst matchup, which is crazy. But will we get a balance patch? I mean, I hope so. I hope we do get a little bit of a balance patch, especially with Capcom saying that they are willing to do more than once a year now. So I think it would be a good idea. Put a little few things in there. And I mean, obviously some characters definitely need a few tweaks here. Now, the funny thing is, I mean, obviously Ho Muffin added to the end of that, obviously the worst Shoto Ken needs buffs, the interesting thing about this is that the reason why it's kind of weird is because there's no egregious things going on in the game right now. We don't have anybody who's dominating, and the characters who are bad aren't even bad, right? As much as I complain about Kimberly, for me, trying to make it sound like Kimberly is the worst character in the world definitely is me trying to get everybody to agree so that they buff her eventually. Please, because she needs it. But just don't put her at 90% damage. But most of the bad characters are not terrible, right? There's no character in this game that doesn't have the ability to win or to do damage at a tournament, right? There's no character that's bad, and there's no character that's super dominant. Now, a lot of people are starting to see characters such as Rashid or M. Bison as being a little too strong. I know a lot of people still hate fighting Zangief, and, interestingly enough, when I talked to Itazan at EWC, he said that he thinks Zangief is top 3. Mena RD just won Cream City Convergence with Zangief, so I still am... I'm still not willing to put Zangief in top 5 just yet. I'm not even sure if I'd put Bison in top 5 yet either, to be honest with you. Zangief just needs a couple of things to be fixed, honestly. The one thing I would change for Zangief is I would revert the knee. I would revert the knee change, because the knee being -3 was a mistake. Was a mistake, honestly. Drive rush knee being at worst +1 was a terrible idea. Was a terrible idea. And, it's okay for Zangief to be +1, but off of a drive rush is what makes it scary, because drive rushes are so strong in this game. And in fact, the more and more I continue to play this game, drive rushes, they need to be nerfed. I personally think that. I personally think drive rushes have to be nerfed. I think they're too strong, and I think having crouch medium kick drive rush is super strong. Now, people are always like, well, Zangief doesn't have that. He's still strong, right? So, but that's a whole different story, because command grabs exist, right? And it's very, very different here. Bison, yeah, a lot of people talk about Bison as being too strong. I don't think Bison... I think Bison is... he's just extremely solid outside of defense. And I like that. I like the dichotomy that he has, that he's super good on offense but really weak on defense. He's essentially what Kimberly was supposed to be. Sorry, everything goes back to Kimberly. I apologize about that, but as a Kimberly main, I can't help it, and it's frustrating. But everything Bison is what Kimberly was supposed to be, right? I mean, when Justin said all Kimberly players should go Bison, the reason why he said that is because Bison is just offensive. He's crazy. He also has no defense, though he has a throw invul option, which Kim does not have. And then he has bomb setups, which are infinitely better than anything Kimberly can do because they blow up automatically for you. Can you imagine if Kimberly's spray can stuck to the enemy and if I did run slide, it would explode and make me plus? Why am I using Kimberly? Why am I using Kimberly? I mean, honestly, oh God. But you know, Bison is what they wanted to do. And so I think, you know, he might need to be nerfed a little bit. I would just add a little more scaling to things. Like when the bomb explodes, maybe just automatically scale the combo a little bit more so he does a little less damage, right? I would nerf his damage a little bit. Like I said, Zangief, I would nerf the knee a bit. But see, like who else? Like Rashid. When Isar is out and while the power-up tornado is out post Isar, he should not be able to gain meter, right? I mean, it's too easy for him to get 2 level 2s in a round because he just activates it, does a spinning mixer, you block forever, and he just gains all this super meter. It's kind of strong. But again, like that's it, right? Like, I don't think we're calling for, like, you know, chop off Rashid's legs. I mean, people are calling for chop off Bison's legs, but, you know, he doesn't deserve that, honestly. He doesn't deserve that. Yeah, right, exactly. And that's the thing. We don't want to nerf the tool itself. We want to nerf, like, the consequences of the tool, right? So Isar is, I mean, it's really strong. Don't get me wrong. Like, it probably could use another nerf, but not gaining meter, I think, is really strong is a really strong way to balance it out in and of itself. And we don't want to go overboard with the nerfs and then turn somebody useless. And that's actually surprising. What's been good about the Street Fighter 6 balance so far is that they really haven't chopped off anyone's legs. JP is the closest. And JP really honestly didn't deserve even what he got. I think what they did to JP was excessive, to be honest with you. I still don't like the amnesia change that makes it so he does no damage off of amnesia. I thought that was way too excessive. He's still really strong, for sure, but like, I'm sad because I would like to see current season 1 JP fighting current meta, because I think it would actually be more even. I think he would have, I think Rashid, I think Bison and some of these other characters would be able to keep up with him. So, you know, leave the Crouch Fierce alone for JP. Leave that as it is. But, you know, maybe keep the level 2 so he doesn't gain meter, just like Rashid. But, you know, amnesia maybe doesn't need to scale to 50%. Maybe to 70% or something like that, you know. And you know, it's funny, Kuropi, because you say JP needs to go away. The funny thing is, if you're a Kimberly player, that fight is not that bad, to be honest with you. In fact, Kimberly, even in Season 1, was one of the only characters that could fight Rashid decently, even in his super buffed form. Home Up and says, I'd like Lily not dump all her good character points into Crouch Heavy Punch. I mean, the funny thing is the balance patch that they put out was like, we noticed her Crouching Heavy Punch was too good, so we don't want her to be one-track character. So we tried, you know, balancing things, and it's still like the best button ever. She's just really hard to balance because of the existence of Drive Reversal and Windstock. Like, she's just really hard to balance because, again, as I've said, Windclad Spire. So Wind Spire, I'll call it. Wind Spire is the strongest special move in the game, right? OD Wind Spire is still the strongest special move in the game, in my opinion. It's broken. Like, on paper, everything about that move is completely broken. What makes it fair is more of the drive impacts, the drive parries, system mechanics, drive reversals, these kind of things like that. But, like, on paper, that move is so busted that it's hard to balance her. Like, I would be willing to weaken Windspire to make it so that you could buff other things of her and not be broken. And that's kind of how I feel like it. So, yeah, Zoners and Grapplers. I mean, Grapplers are not typically strong. Zoners are typically strong. Grapplers are typically weak in fighting games until like people buff them to ridiculous levels, basically. Why is it that only rushdown characters get privilege, grapplers and zoners get shot on sight? I've explained this before in a past video, Ho Muffin. It's because when you fight a rushdown character, the answer to how to survive is obvious. Just block the right way, right? So a rushdown character comes in you, hits you with this mix-up. I totally stood up and blocked that. But when you fight a zoner and you block a fireball a screen away, you're like, this is not fun at all. Or if you fight a grappler, you're like, I need to block, and then they command grab you. You're like, what? You know, and so the human tendency to want to turtle and maybe just block to try to survive doesn't work against grapplers and zoners because there's no obvious solution, right? So if you're fighting a rushdown, yeah, their four-way mix-up might be so strong that essentially it's a guess and you're not blocking, right? Millia blocker exists, right? For a reason, to show you that there's just no way to react it. But someone can fool themselves into saying, I totally blocked that. I guessed the right direction. Why didn't I block that in time? They know what the answer is supposed to be, even though the real answer is don't be there in the first place to get mixed up. But when they're there, they're like, I could have blocked that. And if I did, I would have lived. And reality is, no, you didn't, because most rushdown characters, they're so elegant that if you have to block like 5 mix-ups to survive, right? But grapplers and zoners, if you're blocking Dalsum's fireballs and you're like, what am I supposed to do? You try to jump, and you know, we've all fought that really good Dalsum out there that we can't do anything to. It feels like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm not allowed to defend. Same thing with grapplers. I'm not allowed to defend. And so those characters frustrate people so fast. Yeah, Dalsum makes you give up. Dalsum makes you give up. He literally does. And nobody will tell you Dalsum is top tier in Street Fighter 6. Most people have him in that. I divide the game into two halves. There's 2/3 and a 1/3. So there's 2/3. These are the characters in the top 5. And then these are the characters in the bottom 5. Basically, there's the top 5 and the bottom 5. 2/3 of the characters are in the top 5. 1/3 of the characters are in the bottom 5. And Dalsum is usually included in that bottom 5 section, which is really nuts, because when you fight a good Dalsum, you don't feel like you can do anything, and it's super annoying. It's super, super annoying. And so, yeah, like, that's the reason why grapplers and zoners get shot instantly, because they make people quit the game. They make people quit. That's the problem. And so developers are wary of that. And like I said, for some reason, rushdown characters don't make people feel that way. It's weird. It's been a while since I've honestly experienced this, because I stopped playing SF because I'm so busy with other games. Other games honestly try to give you some kind of defensive answer behind timing to get around zoning. Yeah, and that's the thing. Dalsum doesn't give you a lot of obvious answers, right? They made all of his limbs cancelable because otherwise drive impacts would just absolutely destroy him. I mean, the fact that you might actually have to perfect parry things to be able to beat him is really, really kind of annoying. Right? And Dhalsim's mobility is so strong that it's really hard to lock him down, especially when he's in the air, because when he's in the air, what does our mind say? He's vulnerable, get him. And then he teleports and dodges your uppercut, and then he kills you for all this damage at the end, and you're just like, well, this sucks, you know. It's tough. It's tough because also on top of all that, Dhalsim can teleport next to you all of a sudden. So not only are you trying to get in and zone in on him, you also still have to react to an instant I'm on the other side and I'm crossing you up kind of thing. You know, Dhalsim is very, very difficult to fight if you know what you're doing. And I mean, even if you do know what you're doing, he's really difficult to fight. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that, Slick Tricks, when you just say, I gave up on Dhalsim once. Yeah, this just happens. Like, sometimes you just play him and you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I don't have the mental strength to keep this going anymore. So, rushdowns don't, you think you said it pretty well. Rushdowns don't get annoying because they have that extra step of having to put you on a mix-up situation while zoners and grapplers just do their thing for free. Yep, basically, that is how it's viewed, right? I mean, that's why everybody gets mad at Zangief. When I tell people, Zangief, that you can frame trap Zangief, and as long as you don't put 5 frames of gap between any of your buttons, that he can't SPD you, people are always surprised. They think that you can just churn butter and grab people like the old Street Fighters, but you can't. Like, you can play your offense against Zangief, right? Except for level 3, obviously, but that's a big, huge guess if he's just going to try to mash that out at some point in time. Right, but again, the grappler mix-up, one of their options is I can't block it. So that makes people want to jump, it makes people press buttons, it makes people backdash. It doesn't create this kind of situation where the person's like, you know what? I'm going to guess not to jump because I don't think he's going to SPD this time. When you're fighting scrubs, they're just going to be like, I don't want to get thrown, and they hold up back and they just get murdered, right? And so, you know, in order to fight grapplers, you have to accept the fact that you're going to get SPD'd every once in a while and try to beat him outside of that. It's really annoying. But that's literally any character then. If they're just turning up because they don't know how to play, then the mix-up character gets their mix-up for free. So this is a conversation that's going on over here. Again, it's perception, Mike Lee. It's all perception. It's all perception. As long as you tell yourself, I could have blocked that. Like, that's what matters, right? As long as they say that in their brain, I could have blocked that, I could have DP'd that. You don't feel like you can DP a command grab because you feel like command grabs are just instant, right? You don't see the limb coming out to DP, etc., etc. Grappling is just in particular really, really annoying. Right? It also just feels bad to die to 3 unblockable throws. The problem is when you die to 3 unblockable throws, but then you play the grappler and you see how rarely that ever happens. And when you do, it's usually because you had 3 great reads. As the grappler player, you're like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Right? But like on the other end, it's just like, this is the stupidest, cheapest thing ever. You know, it's crazy. Yeah, you can't just practice perfect pairing or throw breaking or requires time. Yeah, so it's a tough situation to deal with because So I talked about this. You remember on the original Tuesday show, I used to yell at Tubo and David about this all the time, is that, you know, the reason why fighting games are harder than most other esports to get into, not to master, but to get into, is because nothing of your normal human instinct works. Nothing of your normal human instinct works or even perceives to work, right? So if you're playing an FPS or a MOBA, for example, you can run away and, you know, you run past your tower, the guy chases you and you get past your tower and you're like, I escaped. Sure, you're not gaining experience, you're not earning money, you're probably hurting your team by not accomplishing anything or contributing anything, but in your mind, you're like, I lived. Or if you're playing an FPS and bullets are flying and you run around a corner and you hide behind something, you live. And sure, maybe you're opening positions and in the end you get shot or killed anyway, but some form of human instinct actually works for you. And it's funny because when we were interviewing Keats, when we were talking about Rumbleverse, he said the exact same thing. I was like, I felt bad because when I played Rumbleverse, I just ran away from everybody and did all this stuff, and I just kept coming back in, and that's how I survived. And he was like, but the key is you could run away. And that's important. And I was like, aha, to Tubo and David, because like they never ever agreed with me on that. And the problem with fighting games is that there is no form of human nature, panic, defensive mentality that works. Because what are the two things you do when you get scared in fighting games? You mash buttons, or you run away, or you block. But if you block, you die to zoners and grapplers. And if you mash buttons, you just die. There is nothing human naturally intuitive about fighting games. And that's what makes it really hard to learn. And so like Necromancy Black says, that's why I love fighters. You have to deal with things in front of you. Exactly. So if you're willing to understand that and grasp that, fighting games become so great, right? Like, because then it is just like this constant, like, there is no safety point. There is no break, right? And it's funny too, because I've talked about it too. Like, good game developers are thinking the way that I think, okay? Like, it sucks, and Olaf is gonna basically stab me in the face for saying this, but I'd be a really, really fucking good game developer because I understand how humans think. I've even said, like, when you play MOBAs and first-person shooters, there's the travel into the engagement point, right? Do you remember what they did in one of the Smash Brothers? I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Brawl, or it might have been Smash Wii U. But they created a mode where you actually ran and killed NPC things, like little bosses, and gained power-ups until you reached the middle, and then you engaged. They literally tried to build that into a fighting game because they understood why it's so important as well. They understood why having that ability to do your thing and power up and then engage feels better than round one fight, especially in most fighting games these days where round one fight, I got stabbed. like, you play Tekken 8, round one fight, heat burst. You're like, what am I supposed to do? Like, literally, you couldn't do anything to that before the patch, right? Round one fight, Johnny stabs you with stand slash. You're like, what? What the hell? Like, fighting games, you don't have any ability to, right, you don't have about, the fighting game mentalities of controlling your fight or flight response, right? If you have a fight, you cannot rely on your human nature to play fighting games. And that's one of the things that's really, Smash Run for 3DS, there you go. That's what that was. So, it's based on City Trial Mode from Kirby's Air Ride. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. But yeah, I mean, right? DBFZ medium starter into Touch of Death. All right. Bam, bam, spark. Bam, 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 bam. And now it's bam, bam, fireball, 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 super level 3 dead. Okay, that's Dragon Ball now, apparently, with the new patch. Oh man. But like, honestly, like, that's one of the hardest things about fighting games, right? And so that's why grapplers and zoners are so irritating, because they murder your natural flight response. They absolutely, like, you're like, I want to block and be safe, and Dawson's like, yoga fire, yoga fire, yoga fire. You're like, this sucks, right? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm losing. What do I do? And then Zangief, you're just like, no, help me grab, help me grab, help me grab. And you're just like, what am I supposed to do, right? But then when you play a grappler and you realize you have to guess between people jumping and not jumping, boy, is it annoying. It's really annoying to deal with that. But yeah, again, if you play grapplers, you realize how annoying. Like, everybody who's like, my God, grapplers are so cheap, they're so broken. Dude, go play some grapplers for a while. Like, seriously, go play them, and you're just like, this sucks, dude. I hate this. Is King still good in Tekken 8 Necromancy Black? I know they nerf him a little bit, but I haven't played Tekken 8 in a while. I need to get back to it, so... cats are sleeping. It's really hot in here. And when it's this hot, hey, it's RJ. My cats just, Nathan just on the couch and doesn't do anything. Right, just controlling your desire to just block is so good. Yeah, and honestly, I mean, it's why I die in the corner so badly. I get put in the corner, and now all of a sudden I feel like a helpless creature. I am Kimberly, so I am more helpless than most other characters in the game. So that does suck. But, you know, no, Kin Shinobi, this has only been the first question. We've got all sorts of questions here. It delved into two different subjects, but this is still the first question over here. So, but, you know, it is frustrating to lose to grapplers and zoners for that reason. Again, everyone's like, yo, you can't run in first-person shooters. You can't run in MOBAs because that gets you killed. You're not building experience for your team, etc., etc. And I was like, that's not the point. That's later. You learn that later. That's something that you understand the more you play the game. But your ability to run and hide at all gives you a mental victory, even if the mental victory is wrong. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. The way to keep people playing your game is to keep giving them mental victories. And that makes it, at least they feel like they're doing something right. If you're new to a first-person shooter and you get into a skirmish and everyone's shooting and you manage to run away and escape and hide and everything calms down, you feel like you accomplished something. You're like, I survived, I lived. And like, that's a great feeling. You'll learn as you go that you broke position and you let these guys in through this way. And now you're dead because your team relied on you and you ran away. You know, MOBAs, you ran away, you're not protecting your tower, whatever. You know, like, you'll find out that these are the wrong things, but you had those victories in the first place. Fighting games don't give you that. They just don't give you that, right? And there's literally no way to give you those feelings unless you're playing Smash Brothers, because, once again, and I've never done this video. Have I? I've always threatened to do this video, that Smash Brothers is the most intelligently made fighting game of all time. I think it's just like, I'm not even talking about any specific versions, but what they decided to do with the fighting game genre is the most genius thing ever. Like, Smash Brothers is probably one of the smartest video games ever made. Just like ever made. And I'll have to talk about that one of these days. I'll have to finally do that episode that explains why Smash Brothers is so good. Because it gives you those little mental victories. Basically. It gives you those little victories, and I think that's really important to me. That reminded me, Necromancy Black guys, you think we're about to see the FGC community jump from X to Blue Sky? I've started seeing with some individuals, feels like more of the FGC is slowly coming over. It'd be great if it happened. I mean, I don't use Blue Sky yet, but I mean, X is a trash fire. I'm sorry, Twitter is a trash fire anyway, so... have I followed Sakurai's YouTube channel regarding game development? I have not. But I feel like if I watched it, I would spend most of the time just going, yep. That's why in Modern Warfare reboot, the director infamously said they want to give some space to people to camp and don't feel overwhelmed. Yeah. And again, you know, the worst thing about this too is when you talk about this topic of like giving people little mental victories or things like that, you know, the problem is the hardcore players then all turn this into your babies. You can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. You know, like, shut up, dude. Like, seriously, shut the hell up. Like, this is back to the Punch Drunk Love clip that I love so much. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Like, stop it, dude. Like, stop it. Like, games is such a crucial thing and such a careful thing to design, and you're not necessarily dumbing a game down or making it easy for people. You're just creating a way for people to be engaged. As a video game creator, okay, there was a great tweet out there that said, you know, video games aren't meant to just be fun or whatever. They're whatever the designer wants it to be, right? And if you want to design your fighting game so that it is brutally difficult and nobody plays it, that's your business. Like I said, I talked to a fighting game developer and I was like, your game is too hard. And they're like, I'd rather have 1,000 people love my game than 10,000 people like my game. And I was like, okay. The game came out and 1,000 people loved the game and 10,000 people liked it, and they were mad that not as many people played their game. So whatever, you know, like, if you're making a fighting game, you want people to play your fighting game. Like, that's the whole point, right? And so, yes, when you make a game, you want it to be fun. You want it to be enjoyable for people to play. And you do that by triggering endorphins, by knowing intelligently how to make people feel good about themselves when they're doing something right, and giving them small mental victories. There are no small mental victories in fighting games. There just isn't. The main problem with competitive games, and this even applies to real sports, is the game itself can be played many different ways and enjoyed for different reasons by different people. But the win conditions will mean there's an optimal way to play, and if you don't like that way to play, then you feel discriminated. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You know, and that's the thing, right? Like, my whole thing is that no matter what you try to do to the game, you're not going to make it easier to get into, right? So when we're talking about dumbing down games, or I'm talking about giving people little wins here and there, I'm not saying like make it so that it's easy to do, so you don't have motion inputs or combos are easy or whatever like that. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying you can design a game that's difficult, that still rewards the endorphins, that still triggers the happy points in a person's brain, and having the game be very, very difficult to play, right? There's no point in time in which I have ever said that fighting games should be easy, nor do I ever tell anybody fighting games are easy. I always tell people fighting games are hard, but it's worth it. That's how I teach people fighting games. It's hard, but it's worth it. But in order to succeed, you have to look deep within yourself. There's going to be a lot of dark nights out there, okay? Where you're just like, ah, like, it's going to happen, right? But I'm never saying that should go away. What I'm saying is that in order to get more people to play fighting games, we need to figure out ways to make people have more fun while they're playing the game. And as I said, ranked doesn't do any of that. Ranked doesn't do any of that, right? So, you know, I'm sorry, Necromancy Black, I'm totally going to pivot this into some other stupid conversation, you know, as if you don't like that way to play, then you feel discriminated. Right, that's why AI artists are assholes and are like, well, then I should have the right to make art. No, you shouldn't. Go and fucking practice, you idiot. Like, go take an art class. Learn to draw. Spend the years and months and hours that everybody else did to learn how to draw. There's no shortcut. Nobody deserves that kind of shortcut. Learn how to draw, you idiot. Oh, God, sorry. I want to use a much harsher word than idiot. Oh, man. I've never been good at MVC2, so I probably won't play MVC2, but what I will do is I will probably training mode the hell out of Coda and X-Men vs. Street Fighter for like days. I'll probably just stream myself training mode all day. And so, yeah, like, honestly, like, with fighting games, you know, it does feel shitty when you're not good, because it feels like, how do I get to this level that everybody else is to enjoy this genre that so many people enjoy? It's hard. It only takes work. But fighting games can do a better job making people feel like they're doing something, accomplishing something, kind of give them more of that joy. And that's the key right there, is the sense of calm and the endorphins, right? One of the toughest things about fighting games is there's no sense of calm. there's very few endorphins that you get while playing the game. Even if you do land a crazy combo and doesn't kill the guy just comes back and kills you, it feels almost worse. He's like, I landed my raging demon, that was sick, and then the guy comes and kills you anyway, and you're like, well, that didn't matter, like, it's tough.